Hello boys and girls. Today I'm going to read you a story that was one of my children's favourites when they were young. It's called Gumboot's Chocolatey Day. Gumboot was having a chocolatey sort of day. His aunt had been to visit him and she'd given him a big bar of his favourite chocolate. Don't eat it all at once, she said. To start with, there had been 15 chunks of chocolate on Gumboot's chocolate bar. Gumboot didn't know this because he could only count to 10. But what he did know was that he liked chocolate very much. That was why there was now only 3 pieces left. Next to chocolate, what Gumboot liked best in the world was riding his bike. So he tucked his chocolate safely into the basket and off he went to the park. In the park, Gumboot stopped to watch the ducks. Out in the middle, 3 of them were paddling about with their heads under the water, with their tails stuck up in the air. Their curly tailed bottoms bobbing up and down made Gumboot giggle. Gumboot wondered how long they could stay down. He began to count from 1 to 10. When he reached 10, the last duck was still down, so he began again. Gumboot counted up to 10 3 times before the last duck popped his head up. "The winner!" shouted Gumboot across the lake. The duck looked at Gumboot and quacked happily. "I wonder why ducks never smile," thought Gumboot to himself. Perhaps it was because their beaks were stiff. He tried making his snout stiff to see what it felt like. Further along, a little girl was throwing bread to the ducks. "I wonder if ducks like chocolate," thought Gumboot. Gumboot tried to break off a tiny piece of chocolate to throw to the ducks. But chocolate bars only break where they want to. And in the end, Gumboot ended up throwing a whole chunk. "I suppose it's worth it," thought Gumboot. But Gumboot's aim was not very good. The piece of chocolate went straight up in the air and landed at the water's edge with a delicious sounding plop. Gumboot was quite pleased. He ran to the spot, fished out the chocolate and popped it safely into his mouth where it belonged. "Ducks don't eat chocolate," said the voice. It was a little girl. She was holding a large piece of bread. "I'll swap you," she says. Gumboot thought for a moment. There were only 2 pieces of chocolate left. "All right then," he said. "You can have 1 piece and I'll have the other." The little girl put the chocolate straight into her mouth and gave Gumboot the bread. Gumboot and the little girl began to feed the ducks. After a while, Gumboot noticed it was always the same ones who rushed to the bread and grabbed it. So he tried throwing a piece of bread, first one way and then another, which made the ducks paddle backwards and forwards, flapping and quacking. They made such a noise that soon all the other ducks on the lake were swimming towards them to see what the fuss was about. Look at them all. Loads of ducks. Gumboot was having fun. Ducks and breads were flying in all directions. He tried throwing high throws, then he tried long throws, and then he broke the bread into lots of little pieces and he threw them all at once. "Everybody, get ready, everybody," he shouted. "Here goes the last piece." Can you see them throwing the bread up into the air? The last piece flew high over the lake and landed in the water with a deep gulp. That made a funny noise, thought Gumboot. Then he realised that something awful had happened. Something terrible. In his excitement, he had thrown his chocolate into the lake. His last piece of chocolate. His only piece of chocolate. Never mind, said the little girl. But Gumboot did mind. He minded very much. He wandered miserably back along the path, thinking of his last piece of chocolate lying at the bottom of the lake. It made him feel really hungry. A tear rolled down his cheek and it splashed to the ground. Goodbye, called the little girl. But Gumboot didn't seem to hear. It was very sad. Now, a duck quacked behind him. But Gumboot didn't feel like playing with ducks anymore. The duck quacked again, this time more loudly. It seemed to be following him. Gumboot, look, said the little girl, calling and pointing excitedly. Look at it in his beak. Gumboot turned and looked at the duck. It was the champion diver that he'd watched earlier, and in his beak there was something square and brown. What do you think it was? It was Gumboot's last piece of chocolate. Gumboot took the chocolate and patted the duck on the head. The duck swam round in a little circle, quacking loudly, and headed off across the lake. To Gumboot, it seemed that this time the duck was definitely smiling. Goodbye, called Gumboot to the little girl. She smiled back at him. What a happy thing chocolate is, thought Gumboot, as he put the last piece of chocolate into his mouth. It tasted a little pondy, but otherwise delicious. Now, I hope you enjoyed that. See you soon.